News OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and we're bringing you this special broadcast of top stories from our studios here in the National Capital Region. And like always, this is your one-stop shop to understand and catch the news pulse of the day. We are going to be shifting focus to the 67th day of the West Asian conflict between Israel and Hamas, bringing you some top global developments vis-a-vis various presidential elections that are taking place across the world. But climate change is also going to be our focus, even as that COP28 summit has concluded some key points over there. Climate negotiations, deliberations, but of course some hurdles on that front as well. But first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, let's shift our focus to what's happening back at home. Some domestic political developments. Only yesterday, we told you across our rolling coverage how the Supreme Court has upheld the constitutional validity of the abrogating of Article 370 back in 2019 from Jammu and Kashmir. Meanwhile, take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's shift our focus to Rajasthan, where the newly elected Rajasthan Bharatiya Janata Party MLAs are going to meet today to decide the legislative party leader, putting an end to the speculation over the next chief minister for the state. Of course, we have understood what the Bharatiya Janata Party is going to do in terms of Chhattisgarh. We've understood what it's going to do for Madhya Pradesh. And, well, Rajasthan, that suspense is likely to be lifted today. Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, and other party observers, along with co-observers Vinod Tavade and Saroj Pandey, are going to arrive for the 4 p.m. meeting at the party office. Now, it's important to note here that the two-time Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje, who campaigned aggressively for the party during the assembly elections, is amongst the leading contenders, along with Gajendra Singh Shekhawat and Arjun Ram Meghwal. Now, other names in the race, of course, include Ashwini Vaishnav, Sunil Bansal, Om Birla and Om Prakash Mathur, along with 3 members of parliament who have resigned, Baba Balaknath, Diya Kumari and Kirori Lal Meena, ladies and gentlemen. So several of these names that are already doing the rounds. We've gotten a fair share of idea of what they did in Chhattisgarh, what they did in Madhya Pradesh, with the new names of the chief minister now coming out. But the newly elected Rajasthan Bharatiya Janata Party MLAs are going to meet today finally to decide the legislative party leader. This is likely to put an end to the speculation over who the chief minister of the state of Rajasthan is going to be. Now, for this particular meeting, Rajnath Singh, he's going to be making his way to Rajasthan today. And of course, with Rajnath Singh, there are going to be several other co-observers who are going to be accompanying the defense minister. The names include Saroj Pandey, Vinod Tavade, all going to be in Rajasthan today. 4 p.m. the meeting takes place. Two-time Chief Minister Vasundhara Raje, like I mentioned before, she's been campaigning aggressively and campaigned aggressively during the assembly elections. And amongst the other contenders are, of course, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Arjun Ram Meghwal, Balak and Baba Balaknath, Om Birla, Om Prakash Mathur, Diya Kumari and Kirori Lal Meena, all top names, including 3 names that were former members of parliament who have resigned their posts, well, and 1, the members of Legislative Assembly in their particular constituencies, ladies and gentlemen. But shifting our focus from Rajasthan to Madhya Pradesh, because Madhya Pradesh's suspense over Chief Minister's name has concluded, and Mohan Yadav, a senior minister in the outgoing Shivraj Singh Chouhan cabinet, is all set to become the next Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. We've got Vishnudev Sai in Chhattisgarh, and of course, you have Mohan Yadav in Madhya Pradesh. What's going to happen in Rajasthan? That suspense is also going to be lifted at 4 p.m. today. Now, with Mohan Yadav, it's going to mark the 4th consecutive selection of an OBC leader for the top post since the year 2003 in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Shivraj Singh Chouhan over there, of course, Narendra Singh Tomar over there, observer and Chief Minister of Haryana Manohar Lal Khattar also on the screens in the pictures that you see. Mohan Yadav, another OBC leader, added to the list of OBC leaders in terms of chief ministers of Madhya Pradesh since 2003. Narendra Singh Tomar, the union minister who resigned after being elected to the assembly, is appointed as the new assembly speaker for the state of Madhya Pradesh. Additionally, Jagdish Devda and Rajendra Shukla have been elected as deputy chief ministers. So yet again, 2 deputy chief ministers for the state of Madhya Pradesh as well. Mohan Yadav the next Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, two Deputy Chief Ministers, Union Minister Narendra Singh Tomar assigned as the Speaker of the Madhya Pradesh Assembly.
मैं आप सबको प्रणाम करता हूं और आप सबका धन्यवाद अदा करता हूं। केंद्रीय नेतृत्व का, प्रदेश नेतृत्व का, समूचे मंच का, मेरे जैसे छोटे से कार्यकर्ता को हमारे सभी मित्रों ने मिलकर के और आपके मार्गदर्शन में जो जवाबदारी दी, यद्यपि मैं उस लायक नहीं हूँ, लेकिन आप सबका प्रेम, आपका आशीर्वाद, सहयोग मिलेगा तो निश्चित रूप से मैं कोशिश करूँगा। एक बार फिर आप सबका आभार, धन्यवाद।
And moving on, Union Home Minister Amit Shah presented the Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Amendment Bill 2023 and the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill 2023 in the Rajya Sabha yesterday. Now, during the discussions on the bills, Amit Shah emphatically asserted that Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, POK, unequivocally belongs to India and no one can seize it. Amit Shah said that the Nehruvian blunders were responsible for Pakistan's unlawful occupation of a portion of Kashmir. Listen in to what the Home Minister had to say.
एक बहुत बड़ी चर्चा चली कि जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी का कश्मीर के लिए कंडक्ट और इस पर हमारा नजरिया थोड़ा तंग है। जहां तक तंग नजरिए का सवाल है साहब, देश की एक भी इंच जमीन का सवाल है, हमारा नजरिया तंग रहेगा, हम दिल बड़ा नहीं कर सकते। किसी को अधिकार नहीं है अपने बड़े हृदय को दिखाने के लिए देश का एक भूभाग देश से चला जाए और मूक दर्शक बनकर खड़े रह जाए, किसी को अधिकार नहीं। मैं आज फिर से कहता हूं, ये आरोप से मैं सहमत हूं, हमारा नजरिया तंग है। देश की एक इंच जमीन भी जाती है तो इसके लिए भारतीय जनता पार्टी का हर कार्यकर्ता सर्वोच्चता से संघर्ष करेगा, लड़ाई करेगा और लड़ेगा। हमें कोई इसमें शर्म की बात नहीं।
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at India's solar exploration as it takes another leap in terms of India's space research exploration of the sun. Now, ISRO has revealed captivating images from its Aditya L1 mission. Take a look at some of these pictures. The Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope. Take a look at that. Short form SOOT. This particular payload instrument is opening up in this video that you can see. And after the instrument was activated on the 20th of November, it captured full disk images of the sun near ultraviolet wavelengths. And now developed by the Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, IUCAA in Pune, in collaboration, of course, with the Indian Space Research Organization. This particular payload, SOOT, allows for unprecedented observations of the sun's lower and middle layers without atmospheric interference. Some of those pictures that the SOOT payload clicked are on your screens. It took 11 filters to carry out this full disk imaging of the sun, telling us splash points, telling us the quiet points, telling us where the sunspots are, and helping us understand how the climate and the solar behavior affects climate and atmosphere back at home here on Earth. Aditya L1's SOOT payload. And let's play out that visual just once again, where you can see the SOOT payload opening up. This is the Aditya L1 at that Lagrange point 1. Neither close to the sun, neither far away from it, sitting at a vantage point. The best point, rather, it's called the best seats in the house, from where it has an unobstructed view of the magnificent solar body. The sun with the unobstructed view, Aditya L1 can now click pictures, can study, can carry out its experimentation. And this particular video that actually, the payload actually ended up opening on the 20th of November. This video has trickled back to Earth. Now ISRO has released it out for public consumption. You can see the payload opening up, and from there the SOOT, the full form of SOOT essentially stands at the Solar Ultraviolet Imaging Telescope. Now this telescope carried out full disk imaging of the sun. It carried out the full disk imaging via 11 different filters, helping scientists back at home understand and study the unprecedented new information that we have received of how the sun behaves, what are sunspots like, what are plage points like, all from Lagrange point 1. It has traveled a long while, a long journey that Aditya L1 has undertaken to reach this particular L1 point. From here, it has an unobstructed view of the sun from where it is clicking these full disk images via its solar ultraviolet imaging telescope, the SOOT instrument. And the SOOT instrument, well, as you can see, it is functioning just fine. It is functioning optimally. It has opened up on the 20th of November and carrying out experimentation, helping scientists at home better understand the solar body. And next up, shifting our focus to the West Asian conflict between Israel and Hamas. It's the 67th day of the war. The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being. War between Israel and Hamas has now entered its 67th day. Before we get you the expanded stories, let's get you the latest updates on your screens first. Take a look at this. Israel says that it is ready to fight for months on end if that is what it takes to defeat and completely eliminate Hamas terrorist group. This, even as the IDF is operating, quote-unquote, according to international law. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant corroborating these statements. Now, troops have encircled the last of Hamas's strongholds in the north of the Gaza Strip. This coming across from the Israeli Defense Forces, even as Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza remains under siege, according to various reports that are doing the rounds. The Biden administration is certainly under scrutiny after Joe Biden and its administration bypassed a congressional review and supplied weapons, especially tank missiles, for its Merkava operations inside the Gaza Strip to Israel. And the United States again has reminded Israel to avoid civilian harm. What a clear dichotomy. Of course, now White House is also concerned as it opposes reports of Israeli military using white phosphorus. It says it is concerned with the use of white phosphorus in the Gazan operations, and it has opposed it. Meanwhile, more than 18,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war, nearly 50% of this death toll amounting to be children. Now, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that Israel does not intend to stay permanently in the Gaza Strip and that it was open to discussing alternatives about who would control the territory as long as it was not a group hostile to Israel. Yoav Gallant said, Israel will take any measures in order to destroy Hamas, but we have no intention to stay permanently in the Gaza Strip. We only take care of our security and the security of our citizens alongside the border with Gaza. He also said that Israel was open to possibly reaching an agreement with Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon, given any agreement including a safe zone along the border and proper guarantees.
Israel will take any measures in order to destroy Hamas, but we have no intention to stay permanently in Gaza Strip. We only take care of our security and the security of our citizens alongside the borders with Gaza and elsewhere. אנחנו נמצאים לקראת נקודת שבירה בצפון רצועת עזה, בעיר עזה, ואנחנו נמשיך את הפעולה הזאת גם במקומות אחרים. ואני קורא מכאן לכל אותם גדודים, לטרוריסטים, למפקדים שלהם, למפקדי הגדודים, תיכנו. אם תיכנו, תוכלו להציל את חייכם. אם לא, דינכם נגזר. לטרוריסט שנמצא בפתח המנהרה, אין אלטרנטיבה. הוא יכול לבחור באחד משניים, להיכנע ללא תנאי או למות. ובאשר למי יממן מה כאשר יקום כוח אזרחי חדש שינסה לדאוג לרווחת התושבים, אמרתי, אנחנו נהיה פתוחים לדון בכל החלופות. התנאי הבסיסי יהיה שהגוף הזה לא יפעל באופן עוין נגד מדינת ישראל. כל היתר, לדעתי אפשר לדבר עליו, זה בוודאי לא יהיה חמאס, וזה גם לא יהיה מדינת ישראל. אנחנו נשמור לעצמנו את חופש הפעולה, לפעול באופן צבאי כנגד כל איום. יש לנו יכולת לענות כנגד כל איום באופן דומה או מעבר לו, ואנחנו עושים את זה כל יום, בגלל זה יש להם הרבה מאוד הרוגים והרבה יותר פצועים. אם חיזבאללה יאפשר תהליך הסכמי, ואני לא נכנס עכשיו לפרטים שלו, אבל ברור לגמרי שהוא לא יכול שלא לכלול את המצב שיש מרחק בטוח מהגדר שלנו בהקשר לכוחות שיכולים לירות אל שטח בישראל, או בהקשר לכוחות שיכולים לעשות פעולות בתוך ישראל, אם הדבר הזה יתאפשר עם הערבות המתאימה, יהיה על מה לדבר.
Well, we'll continue with our updates coming from the West Asian conflict right on the other side. In the meantime, Bengaluru, where chaos and innovation collide in a daily battle for mobility. Traffic is the biggest black dot in this progressive city. Our documentary delves deep into the heart of Bengaluru's notorious traffic problem. Take a look and we'll be back for more.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9 Live. Let's continue with our updates from the West Asian conflict. It's day 67 of the war between Israel and Hamas. And a video that was released by the Israeli Defense Forces on Monday reportedly showed weapons inside a mosque in Jabalia in the northern half of the Gaza Strip. Now, the video was presented by an unidentified member of the Israeli Defense Forces. And in the footage, the IDF soldier describes the scenes inside the mosque where the army claims to have found weapons and a Hamas training area as well.
היום תקפנו פה מסגד, ואני אראה לכם מה מצאנו בפנים. פה בקומת קרקע, מסגד רגיל, לא מצאנו יותר מדי, אבל אם עולים למעלה, אנחנו מגיעים פה לקומה השלישית, איפה שנכנסנו פה לחדרים, ומצאנו ממש כאן מרחב אימונים של הארגון, נשקים, מחשב עם תוכנית אימונים ומקרן, כדי לעשות כל מיני סיטואציות ולהתאמן.
הרבה מאוד אמצעים אלקטרונים שפה החמאס מתאמן ומכין את המחבלים. בצד השני, בחדר השני, מעבדת אמל"ח.
מצאנו מעבדת מטענים, ממש מאלף ועד תף, סוללות, הכל. זה מה שיש בתוך המסגדים פה, זה מה שיש בכל מסגד ומסגד שאנחנו נכנסים אליו.
Meanwhile, United States' State Department Secretary has said that the U.S. is concerned about reports that Israel used U.S.-supplied white phosphorus munitions. A Washington Post report on Monday claimed that Israel used the munitions in an October attack in southern Lebanon that injured at least 9 people.
I will say that our expectation of every country to whom we provide military assistance, weapons and other assistance, is that they use that assistance in full compliance with international humanitarian law and the laws of war, and Israel is no exception. First, which is that we are concerned by the reports of the use of white phosphorus. Obviously, there is a legitimate military use for white phosphorus, but that does not include using them on civilians. It means that if you use them, you have to do everything you can to minimize civilian harm. Anytime that we provide items like white phosphorus or really anything to another military, we do it with the expectation that it will be used for legitimate purposes and in full keeping with international humanitarian law and the law of armed conflict. So we're looking into this and looking for additional information. And then with respect to your first question, you heard the Secretary speak to this yesterday. If any of you were up early on a Sunday or early-ish, you would have heard him speak to this and make clear that, look, Israel is engaged in a very difficult military campaign against a terrorist organization that says it wants to repeat the attacks of October 7th. He decided that with respect to this sale, this was a munition that they needed on an urgent basis, and so it necessitated an emergency authorization to provide those munitions. But that does not in any way lessen their obligation to act in full compliance with international humanitarian law. Those images we found those images deeply disturbing, and we are seeking more information both about the nature of the images and, of course, why they're public in the first place.
Well, you just heard Miller over there. Now, Israeli Army spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, he himself said on Monday that Israel's army was operating legally and according to international law. His statement comes after concerns by the United States about reports that Israel used US-supplied white phosphorus munitions in the October attack in southern Lebanon.
סיפור של הזרחן שהופעל בלבנון. אנחנו פועלים בצורה אחת ברורה, באופן חוקי ועל פי הדין הבינלאומי. כך אנחנו פועלים, כך אנחנו מפעילים את הכוח גם בצפון וגם בדרום, וכך נמשיך לפעול. מאז חידוש הלחימה, צה"ל ושירות ביטחון כללי עצרו כ-140 מחבלי חמאס וארגון אג"פ. זאת בכל רחבי הרצועה. סך הכל נעצרו רק בחודש האחרון יותר מ-500 מחבלים. יותר ממחציתם נלקחו להמשך חקירה בשטח ישראל. אנחנו חוקרים את המחבלים בשטח והם מספרים לנו על מקומות מסתור של מחבלים נוספים ומספקים מודיעין משמעותי לייצור מטרות חדשות להמשך הלחימה. החקירה הזאת היא קורית בשטח בזמן אמת כאשר מחבלים נכנעים. אנחנו עוצרים את מי שצריך לעצור אותו ומשחררים את מי שאינו מחבל ומורידים אותו מהנקז דרומה לאזורים שבהם אזרחים יכולים לשהות.
Meanwhile, Hagari also said that over 500 terrorists from Hamas and a smaller group, Islamic Jihad, had been arrested so far in Gaza and were taken to Israel for questioning. But even as Miller answered those questions, United States President Joe Biden and his entire administration is facing criticism after revealing that it bypassed congressional review to supply tank shells to Israel. The administration reportedly failed to conduct ongoing assessments of whether Israel might be involved in possible war crimes. Just on Saturday, the U.S. Defense Secretary Cooperation Agency, it published a declaration stating that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had invoked emergency powers to supply nearly 14,000 tank rounds to Israel, bypassing the recruitment to consult Congress under the Arms Export Control Act. According to Washington Post report, citing unnamed officials, the U.S. did not adhere to guidelines established by Biden earlier this year in February, which required all arms transfers to foreign governments to undergo continuous scrutiny of the recipients' records on the Geneva Conventions and other global norms for conducting warfare. Meanwhile, flares and explosions lit up the Gaza sky on Monday yet again as Israeli forces continue their bombardment of the enclave. Israel began a ground offensive in southern Gaza just last week after the collapse of a week-long truce on the 1st of December. The IDF has since pushed from the east into the heart of the city of Khan Yunis, with warplanes attacking an area to the west as well. Now, the United Nations General Assembly, it is preparing yet again to vote on Tuesday for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the 2-month-old war between Israel and Hamas. The humanitarian crisis has deepened in Gaza, and hunger is worsening among Palestinians in the besieged Gaza Strip. Reports suggest that hundreds more and the civilians have lost their lives in Israel's assault on Gaza since the US vetoed a Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire just this Friday. Most of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been driven out of their homes. The 193-member General Assembly is expected to pass a draft resolution today that echoes the language of the resolution that was blocked by the United States in the 15-member Security Council last week. Meanwhile, a dozen representatives from the UN Security Council traveled to Egypt to inspect the Gaza border, following Secretary General Antonio Guterres' recent caution about thousands facing starvation in the blockaded Palestinian enclave.
We hear for the first time that hunger is prevailing in Gaza. More and more people haven't eaten for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days.
A stark warning from the head of the United Nations Agency for the Palestinians on Monday. Philippe Lazzarini and other UN envoys demanded an end to the war as they headed across Egypt's Sinai Peninsula to the Rafah crossing, the besieged Palestinian enclave's only entry point for aid. Days after Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that thousands of Palestinians were simply starving. He warned of an implosion of order as hunger spreads, and Gazans who haven't eaten for days loot aid distribution centers and stop trucks on roads to try to find food for their families. The suffering is fueling fears of a mass exodus to Egypt. This is what Lazzarini said he saw on his last visit to Gaza.
Most of the people are just sleeping on the concrete. Winter is here. We have sewage water. They're struggling to find clean water. They're struggling to have food. And that was 2 weeks ago, before the offensive in the south.
Gaza has been under a full Israeli blockade since the start of the conflict more than 2 months ago, and the UN says too little aid is getting in. The war has driven most of Gaza's 2.3 million people from their homes. Gazans said people forced to flee repeatedly were dying of hunger and cold, as well as bombardment, describing desperate attacks on aid trucks and sky-high prices. Gaza health authorities say around 18,000 people have been killed in the crowded enclave, and conflict is intensifying. Mossab al-Khalut is caring for 2 seriously injured sons alone. His wife and daughter were killed when their home in the Jabalia refugee camp was bombarded. They've sought shelter in the European hospital in Khan Yunis. There's no treatment, no medicine, and no food in Gaza, he says. If they don't die from the war, they'll die from a lack of food, from hunger. After the collapse of a week-long ceasefire between Israeli forces and the Palestinian militant group Hamas, which controls Gaza, Israel began a ground offensive in the south last week. It has since pushed from the east into the heart of the city of Khan Yunis, with warplanes attacking an area to the west. On Monday, militants and some residents said fighters were preventing Israeli tanks from moving further west through the city and clashing with Israeli forces in northern Gaza, where Israel had said its tasks were largely complete.
Well, time for me to slip into a quick commercial break here. Lots more coming right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it. It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. This and more. Streaming on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus. Ahead of the curve.
ChatGPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today?
All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies. A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9 Live. Shifting our focus to some top global developments. Donald Trump maintains a strong position in the 2024 Republican presidential nomination and the entire contest, with about 61% support among self-identified Republicans. This, according to a recent Reuters and Ipsos poll. Now take a look at this. In comparison, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley trailed with only 11% each. Now, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy had 5% and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie garnered about 2%, while about 8% of the surveyors were undecided. Now, the poll that was conducted online between the 5th of December and the 11th of December surveyed about 1,700 self-identified Republicans with a credibility interval of plus or minus 3 percentage points. The first ballots of the 2024 U.S. elections will be cast in Iowa's Republican caucus on the 15th of January. Now, the poll found little evidence that Republican voters are swayed by the battery of federal and state criminal charges that Donald Trump faces. Moving on, as European Union leaders grapple with the challenge of renewing financial support for Kiev and extending an invitation for membership talks for Ukraine, Ukraine itself issued a warning on Monday that nations' European ambitions, are currently at a risk, primarily due to Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban threatening to block support for Ukraine nearly 2 years after the Russian invasion. The EU faces the delicate task of avoiding internal division while addressing key issues that require unanimity. Simultaneously, the United States' backing for Ukraine is also under scrutiny from Republicans in the Congress. As discussions unfold in Brussels, at the EU Foreign Affairs Council, the fate of Ukraine and potential internal divisions within the 27 member states takes center stage in a pivotal week for the future of the European Union. It is important to note that President Volodymyr Zelensky has long stressed how vital it is that European capitals decide this year to start formal EU membership negotiations with Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin announced his intention to run for the upcoming March election during discussions with Russian soldiers who served in Ukraine just last Friday. Putin addressed the actions of the Russian army in Ukraine and highlighted the progress of the country's military industry, emphasizing the need for a strong foundation, ideology, industry, and finances for a sustainable future. Ukraine more and more competently. It's obvious. Military industry is gaining traction. We've started producing several times more. I know that we still don't have enough of everything, but they are running out. When you don't have foundation of your own, no ideology, no industry, no money, they have nothing of their own. Then there is no future, but we do have one. And that's not all. President Vladimir Putin also participated in a televised flag-raising event for 2 nuclear submarines, highlighting Russia's strategic push to bolster its naval capabilities. Now, the ceremony that was held on Monday showcased the Krasnoyarsk and the Emperor Alexander III submarines in Severodvinsk, underscoring their imminent deployment in the Pacific. Putin emphasized their role with Russia's ongoing rollout of distinct submarine series during his visit to the Sevmash shipbuilding yard. Soon submarines with missile weapons, Emperor Alexander III and Krasnoyarsk, start duty on the Pacific Ocean Fleet, protecting the far eastern borders of our motherland. Works are on, raising the Russian naval power, and it will undoubtedly continue. Moving on, in a dire warning, a new report has suggested that climate crisis may lead to an alarming surge of up to 10,000 additional deaths annually in the United Kingdom by the 2050s, primarily due to extreme heat and the spread of tropical diseases. Now, this report, published by the UK Health Security Agency, the UKHSA, this report outlines a worst-case scenario where average temperatures could soar by 4.3 degrees Celsius, resulting in a 12-fold increase in heat-related deaths by 2070, with a notable rise predicted in the 2030s. Health effects of climate change. The HECC report by the UKHSA reveals the potential transmission of diseases like dengue fever and Zika virus carried out by insects. The Asian tiger mosquito, known for transmitting such diseases, may establish itself across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and parts of Scotland, posing a serious threat by the 2040s and the 2050s. However, the UKHSA emphasizes that these projections hinge on a worst-case scenario, with room for mitigation, behavioral changes and strategic measures such as national heat and cold alert systems, improved housing with energy-efficient features, and enhanced flood defenses could alleviate the health impacts of climate change. Now, the report also urges decisive actions to counter the impending damage, emphasizing the adoption of solar energy, energy-efficient lighting, and passive or low-carbon heating and cooling systems. In 2022, just last year, a record-breaking 4,500 people in England succumbed to high temperatures, underscoring the urgency of addressing climate-related health risks. Furthermore, the report also highlights a disproportionate impact on vulnerable and disadvantaged communities, signaling the potential widening of health inequalities as worst health effects of climate change unfold. And whilst we're talking about climate change, the draft language of a potential climate deal at the United Nations' COP28 summit in Dubai suggests a range of options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but it omits the phasing out of fossil fuels many delegations are demanding, including the US and the European Union. Here's a report.
The draft language of a United Nations deal on climate change, unfolding at a summit in Dubai, does not include language to phase out the use of fossil fuels. Language that is being demanded by over 100 countries, including some top oil and gas producers such as the United States, as well as the European Union's delegation. The summit, known as COP28, has been running for 2 weeks, and the impasse has set up a difficult final round of negotiations, Sources familiar with the talks have told Reuters that the UAE, which is hosting the event, has come under pressure from Saudi Arabia, the de facto leader of OPEC, to drop any mention of ditching fossil fuels. It's left some delegates distraught. This was Canada's Climate Minister Stephen Guilbeault.
I understand, we're the fourth largest oil and gas producer. We get it. It's complicated. It's unnerving. It creates uncertainty in parts of our country. But it's not a reason not to do it and not to tackle this problem. And even if we bury our heads in the sand, it's still going to happen.
Some young activists used hot air to push the conference to act. These balloons spell the word Yalla outside the venue, meaning let's go in Arabic. A Saudi government spokesperson did not respond to a request for comment. Although the language doesn't include ending fossil fuels as is, it does include other options, such as reducing the use of fossil fuels to achieve carbon neutrality around the year 2050, and ramping up technologies that capture carbon emissions to keep it out of the atmosphere. Representatives from some Pacific Island countries, which are already suffering from rising sea levels, such as Samoa and the Marshall Islands, said the weaker language, if it's adopted, is a death warrant.
And moving on, the much-awaited snow-graced Beijing this week, painting the city in a serene white blanket. However, this winter wonderland is going to come with its own challenges. Multiple regions in northern China experienced heavy snowfall, disrupting normal life. Schools had to close their doors, and transportation faced hurdles due to the thick layer of snow. In Beijing, security guards and workers in residential compounds were spotted tirelessly shoveling snow to keep pathways clear. Parked vehicles bore witness to the overnight transformation, adorned with a thick layer of fresh snow. However, some residents expressed delight at the snow as well. And in the meanwhile, in Zhengzhou, the capital of Henan province, the city's weather bureau issued a blizzard red warning in the early hours of Monday. The warning projected temperatures to dip to minus 1.1 degrees Celsius, which is about 30.02 degrees Fahrenheit. Fortunately, the alert was lifted later in the morning. Shifting our focus here, a manhunt is underway in the Swiss Alpine town of Sion following a shooting that resulted in the death of 2 individuals and the injury of a third. The incident involved a 36-year-old shooter firing multiple rounds across 2 areas in the town. While initial investigations suggest a connection between the assailant and the victims, authorities are yet to determine the motive behind the attack. Police have cordoned off the area and established checkpoints, cautioning the public against approaching or confronting the potentially dangerous individual. And another ripple effect of the Israel-Hamas war, because tourism has plummeted in the Israeli-occupied West Bank's Bethlehem this Christmas season, leaving businesses struggling to keep their doors open as the Israel-Hamas war enters their 3rd month. Before the outbreak of the war early in October, the hotel was overbooked with tourists and pilgrims visiting Bethlehem for Christmas. The Church of Nativity, the traditional place of Jesus' birth during the Christmas period, would normally see queues of tourists and pilgrims at its door. But this year, there were just a few people seen outside. Take a look. Meanwhile, shifting our focus across to Poland, where hundreds of Poles headed to a cinema in central Warsaw on Monday to watch a parliament session that ushered in a new pro-European Union government led by Donald Tusk, illustrating the huge interest the transfer of power has generated. Take a look. And that's all the time we have for you in this edition of Top Stories. But up next, during the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, Professor P.V. Vishwanath was called upon by the Jewish Chabad movement in New York to act as a translator and communicate with the terrorists at the Nariman House, which is home to the Mumbai Chabad Center as well. Take a look. Many thanks for watching.